Well, this is the beauty of Bitcoin and the separation of money and state. It moves away from politics and silly-ass wars and actually just puts people on the same level. Everyone is equal, all-inclusive, and it's not just for Hitler and racists.
But they're also included.
We are back, a full house. Well, you know, it's never really a full house, but the usual participants are here. That is Mr. All-In, aka the $1 Trillion Man. That is also Dr. Evil 10%, aka the People's Champ. Myself, Sir Never Look, also known as the Excellence of Execution. And she's requested the link, however, is not here on Pod 65. Mrs. No Show, aka still Mrs. No Show. So here we are.
It's nearly getting to a rename now, isn't it? Instead of Mrs. No Show, it's Mrs. Requested the Link.
Yeah. Request the link. Could show. This is could show.
It's progress, but still a long way away from where we need to be.
Well, we're over a year since she last turned up.
True.
Shocking.
I mean, I've never actually thought it that way because what was it, episode 3 or 4 was the last one, and we're up to
3, I think, yeah.
65 now.
Yeah,
So,
I can't throw too many stones because obviously the last month I've been a little bit flaky.
Well, I think we've all had flaky times, but you know, we've been to probably 90% of these.
Yeah, I think Sir Neville probably got the record at the moment. I reckon you probably got the most appearances right across the board, I'd say.
I think so.
And that includes, to be fair, like, you know, I've had some big life events like moving house, babies, but so have you, and you just freaking pushed straight through it. It's like you didn't didn't even pause. It was just like, yeah, I'm turning up. I'm turning up.
Turning up.
It just shows how non-devoted you are, considering you don't have a job and pretty much do fuck all, but you can't turn up.
I'm basically a farmer now, so I've literally been out on the tractor all day today.
Listening to the pod from last week, you talked about how you thought you were still in what do you call it? Kind of like the Matrix.
Yeah. What do you mean? As in, like,
yeah, simulation. That's what you called it.
Oh yeah, we're living in a simulation. Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought, if it's a simulation, do we have to hose down your pod every so often? Get rid of all the jizz.
Who knows? Maybe we haven't got dicks in the simulation.
I was going to say, your pod, like the bots would be like, oh, for fuck's sake, I'm not hosing it down again.
Jesus Christ. We really did go anywhere right from the beginning. This is meant to be a serious one for like someone's dad. And then we're already talking about jizz in pod.
Well, maybe they'll have to splice some of the edits.
I was going to say, when I forgot what his nickname is, the Ordinary Man or something.
No, the Everyday Man.
The Everyday Man. For him, you can just tell him to play it from a certain minute, but then he'll have to skip certain minutes in the middle.
Before and after every question, which we're about to answer from the Everyday Man. So just to kind of set the scene, today's pod is slightly different. Rather than talking to you about what's been happening in the world of Bitcoin, we're going to answer some questions which have been posted into the group, and 11 really great prominent questions which the average person and the normal everyday man would ask, or woman, or trans.
I think it's really good. I think it's a good reset, isn't it? It's very much this is like, it's a bit of the skeptic, right? I think we all did this when we came into Bitcoin.
100%.
I did. It's like, okay, I get Bitcoin. I get that money is broken, but why is Bitcoin so much the answer? Why is it so much the solution? I know I'm hearing a lot of positive things, but these are my objections. I still think that I might be just investing in an even worse form of money. I accept that fiat is trash. Okay, fine. But why is Bitcoin so solid, and why do people have such faith in it? And we've got 11 questions on here that really do just poke some holes into Bitcoin and go, what about this? What about that? What about this? What about that? And I think they're all really good questions. They all have answers. And so hopefully when we go through them today, we can just like shed a little bit of light. And it's a really good taking a couple of steps back instead of going, what about Bitcoin in this country, that country? What about this policy in this government, this jurisdiction? Just why Bitcoin again? And what if it fails here? What about this? And I think it'll be a good little pod that we can do. It's a bit different, and the feedback we always get for these pods is always really good. So people love this stuff.
Yeah.
I think kind of like reading through the questions, it did make me think it's very influenced by what we term as fiat. So I think if we're going to talk about some of the basics, we probably need to talk about what on earth why do we call it fiat? Because fiat, I think, has been taken by the Fed and governments as being quite negative, but ultimately it's just a Latin word which doesn't mean government issued. Something along those lines. So that's what fiat is. It's government issued. So money, I suppose to start this off, money is issued by government. It's not backed by anything. It stopped being backed by anything in 1971. And even then it was meant to be the gold standard, but it was more kind of like fractional gold standard because America had been printing dollars on top of gold and spending all the gold of what they were meant to be storing for 30 years. So do you want to kick
I'd like to go back to what you said, Mr. Orlin, as well, because some of the questions that have been asked definitely are things that I thought about at the beginning of my Bitcoin journey, and just thinking, well, am I just throwing good money away, like into the ether? And it's scary, it's scary because you've been programmed to trust this money, trust this government, trust this system, because everybody does it. And what you're doing is probably, putting yourself in the 2% of people doing something completely different and away from the norm. So it's right to have all of these fears and probably more. So throughout today's episode, when we're answering these questions, I'm sure that more will come up, and we'll probably do a part 2, because to what you said, the audience will probably throw in more questions of, yeah, but what about this and what about that? And I know I'm still constantly reading, thinking, I've got all of my questions answered to continue to be bullish on Bitcoin and really ready and armed to answer the questions that most people will have as well. So I think throughout the 11 questions, we'll probably address a lot of them, but there'll still be more. We still hear the energy FUD all the time.
We haven't got that as a question. I think this is more fundamental than that.
Yeah,
that's why I thought it's important to start just with that fiat point, because I think some of them do veer towards like the Ponzi scheme typical, but when you actually look at the fiat, it's fundamentally is a Ponzi scheme. It's only going because people are using it because they're supposed to. But do we want to kick off with the first one? So
yeah,
the first one is, when someone purchases Bitcoin, who holds the cash?
Cool. Do you want to kick us off on that? Well, go for it.
Yeah, go on.
So no one really holds the cash per se, because the typical way is to go through an exchange, right? And what you're doing when you go through an exchange is you're making a trade. So there's a buyer on one side, potentially yourself, and then there's a seller on the other side. So the trade and the cash goes to the other person, essentially. So there's the transaction in between. And the exchange is carving their percentage off by allowing that medium to happen. Also, there'll be money that'll be going to the miner as well, in terms of in terms of obviously the fees for said blockchain, but of course, mainly to the exchange because of being able to allow that transaction to happen. So if you were to look on, we'll use Coinbase Pro, you'll see buys and sells on both sides, and that's where the trade and, to me, the cash goes.
Yeah, the way I'd explain it is just because you're spot on. I just use an analogy and go, how do you buy some Amazon stock? It's the same thing. You can either buy it off an individual. So if you want to buy some Amazon stock, just give someone some money and have them exchange a share to you. There you go. It's the person that holds the cash now is the person that you bought the stock off. You agreed to price, you exchanged it. Well, the difference is you go to a stockbroker and they have a whole host of shares for sale on various different stocks and shares. You make a bid to buy some stocks, provided you bid the right price. Then they give you the share in exchange for the money. And the exchange will hold that money for a period of time. But ultimately, someone sold it and they take fees in the middle. They're just the middleman. Buyers and sellers come in. They enable the exchange to happen. There's nothing different with Bitcoin. This is, I think, one of the biggest fundamental misconceptions of Bitcoin and buying Bitcoin is that there isn't any more scary than buying any other type of investment. Is actually the platforms are nearly identical now. Even some stockbroker accounts allow you to buy kind of paper Bitcoin. We wouldn't recommend it because you can't take custody of it. You get exposure to the price appreciation, but if anything happens and all the banks and stockbrokers get frozen during an economic crash, you're going to lose your Bitcoin because you had paper Bitcoin. You had a receipt that says you own Bitcoin, but the Bitcoin was somewhere else. You didn't have custody of it. So the big difference, why we say go to an exchange, is buy it there, take custody of it. So the only difference to Bitcoin is that you can take custody of the coin, but it's no different to buy and sell Bitcoin. It's just you go to an exchange, which essentially is just a middleman. You put a bid in, someone else is selling Bitcoin, and you buy their Bitcoin. It's very simple.
And we know what happened to people when they accepted paper receipts for gold. The government then took away the gold, and therefore they own no gold, and they had fiat money, which depreciates every year due to inflation. So it is going against the principles of what Bitcoin has been invented for. I think something which I was thinking about to start off with, when it says when someone purchases BTC who holds the cash, is it worth kind of going back a level? So talking about the miners, the fact that miners receive Bitcoin as rewards for securing the network, and that's how a lot of the Bitcoin comes into play at the various exchanges. So it probably goes quite deep this point, but Bitcoin uses proof of work. And proof of work is, I suppose I always think about it in two parts. So you've got part one, which is a lottery. So who is going to do the work? So we have all these miners around the world, and we go, who wants to check for this? We go, me. And we flag up a number, and then the number is generated by the by which one is going to do it. So yes, you've guessed the correct number, and then they get to confirm a transaction when it's gone through properly. So the reason why they do this is because if it's someone pre-selected, you go, oh, I know that Sir Neverlook's going to confirm my transaction. I could pay him off, and therefore I'm now getting paid 6 billion Bitcoin, whereas in fact it should have been 6 Satoshis. So kind of like going back to the point is the Bitcoin comes to exchanges through the miners who are getting its rewards for securing the network, and that's how it originally comes. Is there anything else which you want to add to that?
No, I think it adds some good color to it, because you don't have to purchase Bitcoin for cash. You can just get it through mining. I think without confusing the person who asked the question too much, it's like that is multiple layers in. I think for the average person buying Bitcoin, you do come in and buy it with fiat. You buy it with some government issued money, which just to even add a little bit further detail to what fiat is government issued money, like pounds, dollars, and euros. That's what we're talking about. Fiat is just a collection of all that. So and you can look at it. Question number one. I think we're done.
Yeah, you could look at it as just a currency exchange as well.
Yeah, it's the same as switching. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, when you go on holiday, switch your pounds to euros. It's kind of what you're doing. You're switching your pounds to Bitcoin instead.
Well, if you go to El Salvador, switch your pounds to Bitcoin and Satoshis.
Yeah.
Have a whale of a time.
Exactly, yeah. It's and it'll be a matter of time until when you walk into those travel agents and those Forex kind of companies, they will allow you just to change it to Bitcoin. It will just be part of it. Yeah, there's more and more.
So we've got a couple of countries. So we've got El Salvador and we've got Central African Republic, who have moved over to Bitcoin as a kind of like secondary currency.
Yeah.
Come on, then. Let's keep this moving.
Okay.
Cool. So question number 2, and this is a big one, I felt, and one that I personally looked at quite a lot again during the journey of what happens if the government outlaws Bitcoin.
Yeah,
the kind of like return of this was, can they?
Oh yeah, of course they can. They can make anything illegal.
They can.
I mean, we've seen it in Argentina. So in Argentina recently, they banned buying crypto because everyone wants to move away from a sliding Argentinian peso. So if you're listening to this and you haven't listened to the many episodes where we've mentioned Argentina, the average rate of inflation in Argentina is, I think, over 50% yearly. It's been hyperinflation. I don't know. Oh no, sorry, it's 100%. It's been hyperinflation so many times, and it's had currency changes, I think, 5 times in the last 30 or 40 years. So they've tried to ban Bitcoin, but you can buy dollars and then buy Bitcoin, so it's not stopping it.
Yeah,
I think that's the biggest point about what happens if government outlaws it. I think for me is Bitcoin is decentralized, so it can't really be banned to the point where Bitcoin no longer functions. Bitcoin will always function no matter what governments make Bitcoin illegal. The nodes will still be running and the miners will still be running, and anyone with an internet connection can connect to the Bitcoin network and transact. You can hold your Bitcoin in a completely non-custodial wallet and you can transact with the network provided you have an internet connection. So Bitcoin will continue no matter how much governments ban it and try and make it difficult to be used. However, that does mean that for the average person who are coming through an exchange, for example, if Bitcoin was, say, illegal in the UK, let's just say that happened, straight away, all the exchanges could no longer serve UK customers. You couldn't go to an exchange and buy Bitcoin anymore. It'd be much harder to do it. So it's important to try and get your Bitcoin early before any stuff like that happens. And you'd have to almost go onto the black market to buy your Bitcoin then. So it would, and I think always when people ask these questions, it's like, what would happen to the price and stuff if this happened? It wouldn't be good for price. Undoubtedly, it would definitely mean the amount of people that could buy Bitcoin would be less, especially if governments collaborated and actually banned it all at once. That could be quite damaging to Bitcoin for a period of time, because obviously a lot of the buys that happen right now on exchanges, if the government universally just went, but it's banned now, it would all go underground. There'd be a lot of people that have Bitcoin, the existing hundreds of millions of Bitcoiners that are already out there. We could just continue. If we've got our sats, we could continue almost living off a Bitcoin standard, regardless of what the government does. It would stop new entrants that want to start on the exchange and then go into more of a, oh, okay, I'll buy some Bitcoin off someone that I've met and just kind of physically give you something, and you give me some Bitcoin in exchange. So it would be detrimental to price. It's definitely a big risk. If a big country, America's the biggest, right? If America was to ban Bitcoin, that would not be good on the price. We would see a big dip in price if that was to happen. But I still think it would be temporary. I think all these countries like China have banned Bitcoin, and eventually they realized they couldn't stop it. It got out of control. What they tend to do is ban it, figure out how to regulate it, then it comes back. So I'd imagine America and the UK will probably go through similar paths, and we'll probably will ban it at some point, especially when they're about to see the amount of their fiat dollars or pounds be converted into Bitcoin. Their last gasp attempt is just going to be make it illegal. It won't stop it, or just delay it, and then it will still fall.
Yeah, definitely. So it's probably worthwhile saying that if they can ban it, and they probably will ban it, similar to like gold, because it will just be history repeating itself and just continuing to make the argument that Bitcoin is digital gold 2.0. So, we've seen this happen, and the biggest one has been China, but a couple of countries that I've found that have also outlawed and banned cryptocurrency altogether also include Egypt, Iraq, Qatar, Oman, Morocco, Tunisia, Bangladesh, and 42 of the countries have either implicitly banned digital currencies by putting restrictions on the ability of the banks to be able to deal with crypto currencies as well. We did see that for a while in the UK, where you weren't able to get your fiat money, cash, etc., off ramp into exchanges. I also noticed now that if I was to do a financial transfer using Barclays, it gives you various different categories as to what this transaction is. Is it an investment? Is it family, friends? Is it savings? Is it paying for a trade? But one of them is cryptocurrencies. I've never ever clicked it, but I do imagine that if I tried to click it, it would probably ban it.
At what point do you think it's too late? As in, a government goes, we're going to ban it? Because at the moment, it's in a couple of ETFs, isn't it? We've got people like JP Morgan having funds in crypto. We've got one of the BlackRock platforms is integrated into Coinbase in order so they're high profile, no, not high profile, but some of their VIP customers can trade Bitcoin. So, I mean, at what point do you say it's too late? Because it's starting to get to that point now in the West, because it's like you are letting us invest in it.
Yeah, I'd argue it's already too late.
Yeah, I was going to say it's probably way too late.
Yeah, because that was what was going in my head, because I think America and UK, it's too late. For China, they just do what the fuck they want. So yeah, they may ban it again, but for Biden or whoever's going to be the next president, Harris or whatever, I just don't think they can do it anymore. It's already in the financial system, and also
they do, but Chinese people love money more than rappers. Like, as in, Chinese people absolutely I saw this clip where they've even got a Chinese god for money. I don't know the direct translation for China in what's the word in Mandarin, but there is a Chinese New Year, literally a phrase that says, I hope you get fat and rich, essentially. So for them, they are shooting themselves in the foot so badly by denying and obviously banning cryptocurrency, i.e. Bitcoin. And I think once they do, they will come back hungrier and addicted, bigger than ever.
But I would say, I don't think America and the Western countries can ban Bitcoin. But I believe that the countries which will serve as a ramp for hyper-Bitcoinization will ban it. So you got, your tin pot countries, the ones having problems with the currency, and the ones who are obvious targets. So Argentina, we just mentioned, they tried to ban it because they are in the shit. They are unbelievably fucked. No one wants to hold pesos, Argentinian pesos. And, put that across Venezuela. I think they banned it. Another tin pot dictatorship. Whatever ones, you got Turkey. I think he's flirted with the idea. No, actually, he did. He banned it at one point.
Turkey is banned. Bitcoin is banned in Turkey.
Think about this. Someone sees you drowning in a sea. You're about to grab a life jacket, and they take it off you. That's literally what this is, because they don't want you to have it to get out the sea, and the sea is basically the shitty fiat currency.
Well, the government, basically what's happened in that analogy is the ship that you're on is broken into a million pieces and it's just irreparable. Someone else is trying to rescue you, and they're like, no, don't take that life raft. We're building this boat back together, and they've just got little bits of wood and they're building it in the sea. You're like, I don't think you can build a boat in the sea whilst you're sinking.
That's the best way to explain it. And I would
also disagree with what you said about the US and potentially the UK not banning Bitcoin, because, and we'll come back to this episode, I'm sure in time, when they launched their CBDCs. When they launch CBDCs, they will not, for everyone else, central bank digital currencies, they will not want you to be buying Bitcoin whatsoever. They already don't want you to buy it now.
I think that they can't ban it. I think they will restrict how you can buy it. So it'll be, I think it's in China where they you can only buy on exchanges. You can only be held, or even it's just designed now like Coinbase. You can't extract your coins.
I think that's a good point. Yeah,
correct.
I think there will be. I think you're right. It's just one of them where that I think to the point, it's like it's too late for the UK and US to ban Bitcoin and get away with it. It's too well established and people know too much about Bitcoin now. So what they will end up trying to do is to say Bitcoin is causing climate change. Bitcoin is funding terrorism. They will do something like that, and they'll bring emergency measures in place.
They've said all those,
and only for 2 weeks. But we're banning Bitcoin for 2 weeks. Oh, it's 2 months. Now it's 2 years. Now it's another. But I think it's too late for people to buy it. I think people understand Bitcoin too well, and too many people understand Bitcoin too well to know the bullshit reason that they're trying to ban it doesn't fly. The real reason is that we are separating money and state, and the state don't want that to happen. Clearly they don't. So this is one of these very unique situations where this is not just a normal investment that, may the government ban it because it's a little bit edgy. No, almost definitely the government is going to get involved and make it very difficult for Bitcoin to succeed. So expect it. They're going to regulate it to hell. They are going to outright ban it. That is coming.
They'll be like, you need to put your coins back on the exchange. Just be like, no.
Yeah, but don't worry. We'll put little bits of paper that says each bit of paper represents like 100,000 Satoshis, and we're good for it. We're good for it. Just accept the bits of paper, and guess what? Over time, those bits of paper aren't redeemable anymore.
Just for anyone who doesn't know this, it's happened. The big example being the US in the 40s, banning the personal holdings of gold or possession of gold, to be more precise. And then they said backed by gold. And then 1971, we're not backed by anything. And it's gone.
Could you imagine a world where the Bank of England becomes an exchange, in inverted commas, where you then put your Bitcoin onto the exchange in return for CBDCs, and then and it's held safely there, but really it's not, because they want to continue to hold the Bitcoin, because I believe that they probably see the value in Bitcoin when they get to this point. And so to get the Bitcoin off you, they'll entice you to part ways with it, and they will keep it safe for you.
And if you're thinking CBDCs, they're a good thing, blah, blah, blah. What's the difference between CBDCs and standard money now? That's a question for anyone thinking. It's exactly the same, just slightly more digital, probably a better transfer system to cut out Visa and MasterCard. But fundamentally, it's the same shit, and someone else is controlling your money and expanding the monetary supply, which is a fundamental problem with the money at the moment, which is causing the cost of living crisis.
Yeah. Plus, you lose all privacy in your spending. Suddenly, now cash is now dead. They track every single transaction, and potentially could even ban certain transactions. Maybe you've been on one too many holidays the last 5 years, so your carbon footprint is too high. Next time you try and book a flight, they can ban it. CBDC is literally cash without the privacy and a whole host of authoritarian potential restrictions.
And guess who's trying to implement it? Guess who's trying to implement it first?
Is it UK?
China. China have got it on the go in certain regions, and
I know Rishi does them.
and they've been using it as a form of social credit already.
Yeah.
I'll quickly read out a couple of countries as well that I found and their relationship with Bitcoin and other altcoins. So Algeria currently prohibits the use of cryptocurrency following the passing of a financial law in 2018 that made it illegal to buy, sell, use, or hold virtual currencies. Bangladesh also has an ambiguous relationship with cryptocurrencies. Officially, prohibitions are in place with transactions in crypto punishable by up to 12 years under the country's money laundering and terrorist financing laws. However, the country has imposed a new blockchain strategy, signaling a warning towards crypto and virtual assets, and there have been no credible reports of any convictions related to the use of cryptos. So I'll just pause there because, again, they will probably use fear-mongering scare tactics exactly like this to dissuade you from entering into anything related to Bitcoin. And naturally, that'll make you think, yeah, maybe I shouldn't. But continue. Stacks out.
I think we're going a bit into like the nitty gritty. But like I said, I think for anyone really listening to this, you're probably in a Western country.
Yeah.
They can't. Like literally all they're going to do is try and skate having an exchange and lock it in.
But I think these are all good examples, essentially, because you've got to remember that whilst you think it can never happen here, 9 times out of 10, if not 10 out of 10, it probably will happen here.
Yeah, because the thing is that what's interesting as well, because the question is like, what if the government outlaws Bitcoin? Well, they're saying the government. I think they mean the government, but in reality, many governments already have banned Bitcoin. And actually, if you look at the Bitcoin usage in those countries, because you can see it on the network and what wallets are where, usage goes up. Because when the government banned Bitcoin, it usually means that their local currency has hit hyperinflation. So the people have to exit that currency and get into a more stable, sound money. So Bitcoin ends up doing really well after a government bans Bitcoin, just because it's the best form of money and people will find a way to get it. And they'll risk going to prison or fines or whatever, because if the other option is every penny you have goes to zero, then you're going to risk prison just to switch your money into a more stable form of money, and then that is Bitcoin. So, and
also just on that point, maybe an ending point, maybe to move on to the next one. We always harp on about it, but the Bitcoin standard, first 50 to 100 pages is a really good summary of the history of money and how it's evolved. And it is human beings gravitate towards what we call as sound or hard money, which is hard to replicate, limited sources. And then we're dragged back into this where the government can do what they want, where they can print as much so they can hide their debt, they can have irresponsible policies, they can promise all sorts to the public, such as pay off student loans. And yeah, but it harms the poor, as we've seen. We had furlough in the UK, and now we're really paying for it.
Yeah.
All right. Question 3.
Cool. So, question 3: who monitors and regulates Bitcoin?
Fucking everyone.
You kind of already touched on it, and the key word is decentralization.
Yeah. Well, the miners and the nodes,
right? But it is like people still think that Bitcoin isn't monitored, isn't regulated. It's one of the most regulated assets in the world. People think Bitcoin needs more regulation. Like all the existing financial regulation that exists on how to have a bank account, how to have shares, all that exists to buy Bitcoin right now. Like nearly every single big exchange, if you don't accept driving license and passports to do the typical anti-money laundering and know your customer checks, you can't buy Bitcoin. So at the moment, dirty money, as they say, like money from drug deals or terrorism, whatever it might be, the dirtiest form of money you can think of, it's very hard to get that money into Bitcoin and exchange it for Bitcoin, because all the big exchanges want to know who you are, And if you do deposit a large amount of money onto an exchange, they want to know where you got it from. You need to prove your source of funds and did it come from a legitimate source. Provided you can prove that, they allow you then to exchange it for Bitcoin, and then you can do what you want. If you can't prove where you got that money from, they'll just send it back. They go, we don't want to touch it. And they'll probably report you as well as a potential fraudster, and an investigation will start taking place. Exactly the same is what would happen if you did that with a bank account and you just deposited £500,000 one day, and the bank just went, where'd this come from? You go, just stuff. My business did well this week. Like, no, well, we want to know, like, where's the receipts? Prove, who did this come from? What did you sell? And if you couldn't prove it, they would just send the money out and go, or report you to the police, and they would come and investigate it. So in reality, whilst Bitcoin is almost like this beautiful blend of best of both in my world, which is, if you want to be completely unmonitored and unregulated, you can use Bitcoin in that way, and you can go completely off grid, have a decentralized wallet, and just purely interact with other Bitcoiners, exchange goods and services with them in exchange for Bitcoin, and then no one is monitoring you and no one is regulating you. But that's quite hard to do. For the majority of people, they go through the traditional financial system, which is highly monitored and highly regulated, and is just as safe as a normal bank account, which, like I always like to say, if you want to commit real big fraud on bank accounts and whatever, you can do it. You just got to be a little bit clever, get a few dodgy passports, a few dodgy driver licenses, and you can walk straight through these systems. So yeah, fraud can happen in Bitcoin, but fraud happens in the existing financial system every single day, billions every day. So let's not pretend the existing system is whiter than white and Bitcoin is a bit dirty. Now, Bitcoin and the financial system are just as dirty.
Here's a quick one. So one of the biggest fines which has been given out to a financial company was to, I think, HSBC in Mexico, because they didn't just take drug cartel money, they actually manufactured certain banks so that the Mexican cartel could drop their cases of money or crates of money into specific holds to go into their own vault.
Yeah.
So that is HSBC.
There's a documentary on that on Netflix. That's how crazy all this is. And I think they laundered like tens of billions, and I think their fine was like 65 million, like the largest ever or something. You go, they got fined 65 million. Like that's, and I think someone,
I think it was only about a week's profit or something ridiculous like that.
Yeah, for processing the money, but
it was like three. I think it was like 3 days revenue or 3 days worth of profit for HSBC was their fine. Like they literally, a couple of their banks were in Mexico, completely just working for their cartel, and their fine is 3 days profit.
There's one of the European countries, but I can't remember the exact, and that was a massive fine as well, and it was similar circumstances. So yeah, when we go to kind of like going into regulation, but I think we've covered regulation, and it's also, if you look from it from a consumer protection, that's the whole point of the miners. It's the whole point of the nodes to actually look at the transactions and make sure they go through correctly.
Yeah, I did also, when thinking about this question as well, come across that Michael Saylor has obviously created the Bitcoin mining committee as well. So there is that as well. So whilst, again, nobody is in control of Bitcoin and it's decentralized, the Bitcoin mining community is there to kind of shape how they want to continue and to protect the miners as well from, obviously, well, for the fees that they get. So that there is things there or thereabouts around Bitcoin, but ultimately it's a free for all.
There's a very good point, actually, because the real person who actually really does monitor Bitcoin, because the real attacks from Bitcoin, whenever I see this stuff, I assume government agencies and people in suits that work in regulation companies that literally largely do absolutely fuck all. But the real people that do monitor Bitcoin are the miners.
Yeah.
And the people that run nodes, because some people do attack Bitcoin genuinely from the code. They try and change the code of Bitcoin to be more favorable to themselves, either giving themselves more Bitcoin or making their mining operation more profitable. Like they try and slip stuff in and change the code. And it's people that run the nodes and run miners that spot these attacks and reject them. So when people try and change the code to be something that Bitcoin shouldn't be, then those get rejected. And there's a whole host of processes that enable that, which by and large, it pretty much means that 90% of the nodes and the miners need to agree to a change, which getting Bitcoiners to agree on anything is very difficult, which means changing Bitcoin is very difficult, which then it's kind of a good defense mechanism, because when someone comes in, because no one comes in with a change that is clearly a scam that is going to profit them, saying that's what they're going to change. They pretend it's something else, and they slip that little change in the back door. And they go, oh, no, I just want to change this. It's like, it makes transactions 2% faster, And then someone looks at their code and goes, okay, potentially you are making transactions faster, but what's this over here? This over here is not what you said. This would enable a whole new set of miners to be very profitable. And oh, look, you actually own the company that owns those miners. So we reject the change because that is not what you said it was going to be. So they're the gatekeepers of Bitcoin, really, are the nodes and the miners. We protect Bitcoin from malicious attack, because Bitcoin is pretty much, it's just code. So all it is, it's a code in a database. So someone maliciously changes that code, it breaks Bitcoin. So that's why it's very hard to change Bitcoin, and you have to win over the whole community and really promote to us that it's going to really improve Bitcoin to be even worth changing it. Because even if we agree the change is good and it doesn't have negative effects, just changing Bitcoin is a risk. So it's really hard to change Bitcoin, and that's if anything, that's where the real attack comes from. I'm not really worried about governments and regulators, that we know they're coming, and it's just Bitcoin carries on regardless. What a bigger attack is actually attacking the code base and changing Bitcoin to be essentially to just, the number one thing would be inflate the supply. If you change Bitcoin from 21 million to even 21 and 1 Bitcoin, you've broken Bitcoin. You've now proven that Bitcoin is not scarce, because someone just created 1 extra Bitcoin that shouldn't be there. Now we're just back into government in issue currency again. So the finite supply of 21 million has to stay. And if anyone's to ever break that, we're all done. The experiment's over. Bitcoin's done.
So this is once again reiterating the importance of proof of work and why it needs to remain proof of work. So if anyone talks about proof of stake, it pretty much is just going back to government issued fiat. The whole point of Bitcoin is it is a revolution. It is a separation of money and state.
Question?
Yeah. If there is a massive digital warfare event, what happens to Bitcoin if they disappear?
So I took this as kind of like 2 points. So one is what happens if the internet gets taken out. But I did also kind of like answer that and say, well, what happens to fiat money then? Because it is digital. There's, not so much actual physical cash. Then the second one is, well, it's on a ledger. So if internet starts up again, there's copies of the ledger on all these nodes around the world, and bump, it's back.
Yeah. Ultimately, Bitcoin and the code has been set up to run, and if it continues to run as is, it will continue until the year 2140. So we won't be here when the last Bitcoin is mined. But if everything should go to plan, it will continue. But it would be very hard, and difficult for every government to coordinate an entire internet ban. And
we're saying that somehow miraculously the whole internet goes down.
Correct.
But
we've got bigger problems.
Yeah, but there'll always be a copy of the ledgers, but everything's fucked if that goes down. Everything. Yeah. So but there are things such as personal satellites. I don't know if it's true, but I read something about ham radios. I don't know if that's just some kind of piss take on Twitter.
No, it's legit. Yeah, mesh hand radios.
Yeah, so there's different ways to sort out a transaction. So I think when the internet does go down, there will always be multiple copies of the ledgers in various locations. So don't worry. And then also, so Neverlook mentioned 2140 then. So 2140 isn't when Bitcoin stops operating. It's when Bitcoin stops getting issued as a reward for securing the network. Then after, it's a transaction fee. So by that point, it would well, it will be the mass adoption of Bitcoin, so therefore the security of the network be done for transaction fees, which will be in Satoshis then.
Yeah, and I think this question is also kind of going, kind of like, you know, like cyber attacks, or like people do cyber attack NASA or the US government, and then they hack into it. So I think this is also going, but what if someone cyber attacks Bitcoin? And the beautiful thing about this is, well, have a go now. You know, the reward is massive. Cyber attack Bitcoin right now, and there's no central authority that kind of holds the keys to Bitcoin. Bitcoin, the code is open source. You can literally download the code and take a look at it. If there was a bug or vulnerability to be cyber attacked, it'd have already happened. The thing why things like Facebook, you know, NASA, the US government, whatever it might be, like some oil company, the reason why they can be attacked, because they don't have all their code open source. They're a massive walled garden, and they have loads of firewalls protecting them. And one day someone gets through and then changes a load of stuff once they get in. And, you know, you can put whatever you want on Facebook, put a load of dicks on there, whatever you want. And everyone goes, oh, they've cyber attacked Facebook, and boom, now it's dick book. Whereas
I love how you just went towards that.
it's always going to be dicks.
Yeah, not even like My Little Pony or I don't know what else. It's just like dicks.
Bob's and Vagine or dicks. It's always going to be. So the beautiful thing about Bitcoin is literally, like, Bitcoin has no firewalls. It has no necessary like protection from the code itself. It's just there. Anyone can go download it. And then it's like both like, so it's just insane how like secure and safe Bitcoin is, because in the modern day, it is the ultimate kind of honeypot. It's the ultimate hacker's dream. It's like, here it is. Here's the code. In the early days, it was worth like tens of millions. Right now, it's worth hundreds of billions. So if you're a good hacker, go hack Bitcoin. Well, figure out a way that no one's ever thought of to get access to Bitcoin that you shouldn't have access to. And
so if they go on hacker miner to, you know, change the transaction, first of all, that miner's got to be picked from a lottery, and then it's also checking it against a node. So if you're hacking a node, then that's got to clarify against other nodes. So it's kind of like that decentralized view. So it's not just one central, it's, I don't know how many miners, I don't know how many nodes there are, but it's this whole network which you've got to contend with.
Yeah, and in reality, that is where the cyber attacks are absolutely focused. You can't focus it on the hub. Bitcoin as the hub is unhackable. It is not, it's been out for 13 years, hasn't been hacked. What is hackable are the nodes at the end, because these are individuals that then get access to the Bitcoin, hack the people. And that is what we've seen a lot of success happening, because individuals are not diligent all the time about securing their Bitcoin. So we've seen miners, we've seen individuals, we've seen exchanges, we've seen everyone that once you've got your Bitcoin, make sure you keep it secure. If it's got access to the internet, someone can cyber attack your connection, get your private keys and take them off, and then take ownership of Bitcoin themselves. That's where all the attacks are focused. So this is, as with any kind of security system, the flaw is always once people get involved.
So that's more like robbery, though. What you're getting at? Yeah,
you're robbing the individual as opposed to hacking the protocol. Yeah.
So we are going to cover this as next subject, which I've been saying for about 3 months, but we are going to do it in a month's time when we'll talk through security, because I think it's a big topic which is a little bit complicated at the moment.
Yeah, I will also drop into the group in the fact that, because when I was thinking about this question and I've come across it as well, is the security of Bitcoin is SHA-256 hash as well. And so I won't go into it, but one of the comments, and it's probably the most liked comments with 8.9 thousand likes from the 2.6 million clips that have been watched for this video. The funny thing is, even if you had 4 billion galaxies of computers working on that problem in terms of trying to overrun Bitcoin, even if someone found the solution, because speed of light has a limit, and the universe is expanding, you wouldn't even be able to communicate the solution to anyone. So, you know, the encryption of Bitcoin and the 256-bit security is so hard that it's pretty much near impossible to overrun.
Yeah, and let's just say, as a thought experiment, let's just say someone makes a computer that can make 4 galaxies in light years, they can do it in 30 minutes. Let's just say that happens, right? They can't, but let's just say they do. Not only do they hack Bitcoin, they also hack every single secure network on the planet. They can walk in and out of banks, in and out of mortgage companies, governments, nuclear missiles, the whole shebang. And basically what it means is encryption, as we know it, is bust. And in reality, which network is going to be the quickest to react? A load of centralized people who are going to be panicking and having everything leaving the door, or some of the smartest cryptographers in the world who work on Bitcoin, they're going to see that coming. And the chances are, if SHA-56 was ever broken, I would actually predict that Bitcoin is probably one of the first networks to be protected from it, because they would see the threat coming, engineer a fix, and roll it out quickly. Whereas all the banks, governments, and all that would just have the head up their asses, and it would take a year to figure out.
See, when you're talking about people walking into like computers and encryptions, I was just thinking Superman 3, man, with Richard Pryor.
Who else would say that other than Dr. Evil 10% while stroking his cat? Fit in the villain role perfectly.
We've actually kind of covered another point there, because I think it was, I'm just trying to find my question. So, there was something about weapons. Oh, here we go. New technologies currently developed will make Bitcoin much less secure in time, i.e. new computers with immense power. So I think we cover that one, because that's kind of answered 2 questions of 1.
Yeah,
correct.
They mentioned in there, just to add it, then they mentioned quantum computing there, and quantum computing, if you look into it, is largely probably a myth. It probably is largely not possible. And yeah, even if it was possible, let's just say it is, chances are Bitcoin is the first to be fixed, and every bit of encryption is bust. It's very interesting. Like, I think whenever, like, when I read these questions, sometimes they're really good questions, but it assumes that the rest of the world and your existing money is all completely safe from this stuff. And you've got to just remember, like, ask that question about your bank as well. So that question there, could new technology be developed that will make your bank less secure in time, new computers with immense power? I just replaced Bitcoin with your bank. And so are you still scared? It's like, and now what are you backing first? Thousands of decentralized developers, the smartest in the world, 100% focused on guaranteeing their money, although the bankers, they will get their money out first. It's going to be the plebs that lose their money. Are they going to fix their network before the quantum computing takes it all out? I'd be also more a bank failing than Bitcoin in that scenario.
And also, just to throw in, kind of semi the same point, but we've seen well, banks stop people using their bank accounts on order of the government because they protested for something which they thought was right. So just throw that in and on top. So there's blatantly an even bigger flaw. Bitcoin doesn't do that. Bitcoin's is inclusive.
You can be racist, Nazi, terrorist. Welcome to Bitcoin.
Come along.
So the next
doesn't get us cancelled.
Yeah, let's encourage everyone to buy Bitcoin by saying that. So going on to the next question. So currently there is an 85 grand government-backed guarantee on bank accounts. What is the Bitcoin guarantee?
It's an easy one, this one. Big fat 0.
Although, however, having said that, like if you're taking custody of your Bitcoin, then the guarantee is 0. You know, it's the whole point. Take custody of your Bitcoin. It's on you. Yeah, it's like who guarantees the cash that's in your wallet? You lose that, it's gone. However, there are some exchanges that are starting to do this FSC 85k government-backed insurance. Now, I don't really believe in this insurance. I don't think it would ever pay out in the event. I can't wait.
Coinbase does it.
Do they have like the FSC for the UK?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Coinbase brought this out. They were the first one.
Okay.
I would, however, read the small print with regards to it, because I think that you would have to jump through a lot of hoops, because people will say, oh, I've lost my Bitcoin, when really they probably mistyped an address or not copied an address properly.
Oh, no, the FSC insurance only insures you against Coinbase going under.
Correct. Yeah.
But the thing is,
your Bitcoin, it's not insured, which is why like this 85k government-backed guarantee on bank accounts doesn't protect you from just being an idiot. It only protects you from the bank going under and losing your money. And and in theory, there's a third-party insurance that will give you 85 grand of up to 85 grand of your money back. Now, I haven't seen any mass example of where that has happened, where a big bank with tens of millions of customers have been paid out. All I've seen is in 2008, that should have happened. And instead, governments hyperinflated their currencies and bailed out the banks for free, because they knew the insurance companies couldn't cover it, and they knew they couldn't actually pay out that amount of money. And also, obviously, anyone over 85k, so if you've got £1 million in a bank account, you're only insured up to 85k. So you lose still 95% of your wealth by doing that. So I still think that this insurance is a fake kind of safety net with a massive hole in the middle, where if a couple of small banks went under, I think they could pay out. But if some of the big banks in Europe and in America go under, I don't think there's enough money to pay this insurance out. So I would be skeptical that this is even worth the paper it's written on. I don't think
they've got too many customers and too little money to back it.
I think to answer this from a different perspective, Bitcoin isn't a company. Bitcoin isn't going to go bankrupt. Bitcoin isn't going to go under. Bitcoin will always exist. So you've got your Bitcoin. The price can go down or up, but it sure as hell isn't going to get into financial trouble.
Yeah, the Bitcoin guarantee is there's a new block every 10 minutes. Anywhere in the world, fire up your phone, decentralized wallet, send Bitcoin to anyone, anywhere, anytime. No restrictions. 100% guaranteed.
And this is
that's a big guarantee.
And this is why governments like Argentina tried to ban it.
Yeah, because you can send money to from the UK, you can send someone in Iran money. How dare you? Every Iranian's a terrorist according to the sanctions list. But guess what? If an Iranian does some great artwork or a new logo for your business, you can send them the Bitcoin and no one can stop you.
Well, this is the beauty of Bitcoin and the separation of money and state. It moves away from politics and silly-ass wars and actually just puts people on the same level. Everyone is equal, all-inclusive. And it's not just for Hitler and racists.
But they're also included.
Oh, dear. Okay, the next one. If the company... Oh, sorry, I'll let you go.
No. I was going to say, if the companies that buy and sell Bitcoin go bust, and we'll just kind of replace that word companies with exchanges that buy and sell Bitcoin go bust, how do you complete transactions?
I think it's a muddle of terminology, this one. So if we go with, if exchanges go bust, peer-to-peer. So you just find people who are willing to sell. There are various platforms which do that, and more will pop up because there's a demand. So I think, and completing transactions, I think it's just a mix-up of terminologies. That's saying, what happens if a transaction doesn't go through. So I think we just treat it as the first bit of the exchanges go bust.
Yeah, like we said, and you gave the great example earlier on. You're buying direct from Amazon, or the seller essentially. You can do that. You know, you can do it peer to peer. Dr. Evil 10%. I want to buy some sats.
No.
Here's the fiat. Here's
You're not having my sats.
No. Yeah.
That's the thing, right? And the thing is, like, this has happened as well, right? We've had loads of exchanges go bust. Back in 2013, there was pretty much one exchange that was responsible for about 80% of the buys and sells in Bitcoin. It was Mt. Gox. It went bust. Mt. Gox got hacked, and behind the scenes, all the Bitcoin they thought they were holding on behalf of others, they lost it all. Someone drained it all out the back, and it went bust. And the price of Bitcoin
I thought they got done for having no kind of like the terrorist funding and money laundering and all that.
No. They literally just got. They didn't do any of that. They just got hacked. They lost all the money.
I was just going to say, because there's been messages on Twitter about the Bitcoin being sold, and I'm kind of like then counter messages to that.
Yeah. So the Mt. Gox stuff at the moment is the fact that they lost all their Bitcoin. I say all, they lost probably 95% of it.
Yeah.
They had about 5% left. And so it's that 5% that's left. But the price of Bitcoin back in 2013, well, the price of Bitcoin when Mt. Gox exploded was $1,000, but it went down to about $90 in the fallout of Mt. Gox. So
it was hard to get off the exchange at the time, wasn't it?
Yeah. There was hardware wallets. There was no seed word backups that hadn't been rolled out yet. You pretty much had to be a developer to know how to take custody of your Bitcoin. Much simpler now, but much harder back then.
Kind of brought things about to actually be able to do it. So it's unfortunately a blessing in disguise.
But I think we're kind of talking about exchanges going under, and Mt. Gox is an example. So I think it's another one. It's the importance of self-custody. So actually owning your Bitcoin, having it secure, and not being reliant upon a third party. It's a key, important part of being a Bitcoiner. And we've seen it with Quadriga, who are pretty much a scam company who claim to be an exchange in Canada. So just make sure you pull your Bitcoin off the exchange when you buy it.
Yeah, because really, every time an exchange goes bust, all that happens is a better exchange pops up with better security, better fees. It's just basically the free market working itself out. You know, when you go back 10 years in Bitcoin, we had one exchange. It was a complete crock of shit. You fast forward 10 years, there's been loads of different ones pop up, die, pop up, die. Now we have probably 5 to 10 pretty good exchanges. They're very, very secure. They have millions of customers. They're something like Coinbase is listed on the stock exchange is in the S&P 500 now. It's one of the biggest companies in the world. That's changed now. It's much less likely to go bust. And even if they did, there's like a 99 others waiting to take over to be the next Coinbase. So back in 2013, this would have been a really dodgy question. Like, what if Mt. Gox goes bust? And I'd have been very nervous answering it, going, I really fucking hope they don't, because I've got some of my Bitcoin there. I'm not sure I'd take custody of all of it. And if Mt. Gox goes bust, no one else is sat there to really take up the demand of where I could buy it instead. But we're not in 2013. We're in 2022.
We've got, some off the top of our heads, we've got Coinbase, we've got Gemini, we've got Kraken, we've got Binance, it's Bitfinex. So, just those.
And
we've got very good security. Like, I'd say the top ones don't seem to get hacked. But I still wouldn't have my Bitcoin on the exchanges.
No. It's kind of like why people use certain banks, or let's say when Monzo first started and Starling first started, you may have used them, but you didn't use them as your main bank. You still might not use them as your main bank. Why? Because of trust. So you stuck with the traditional ones because you thought and believe naturally their security is higher and you don't want to risk losing it all. Slowly over time, you build up more trust with them, but you don't even need to trust them with Bitcoin. You can continue to trust in the one person that hopefully you can trust, which is yourself. Cool. Next question. Number 7. Is it possible to lose all of your money without any help and support?
Yep. Let's move on to question 8.
I think this is...
We've answered 8.
Yeah, just to reiterate, we are going to talk through custody and security because it's been a long-standing thing, which we should do. But I think at the moment things are a little bit more complicated. 2 weeks ago on the show, we touched upon what Jack Dorsey was up to, which was a 3-factor authentication, I think, using block servers, the person, and the actual device. So bring the 3 together. And that's the kind of direction which we want to move to make it easier for the consumer, because I think, admittedly, it is hard at the moment. But there are plenty of good guides out there. And I think there's a process where you could pay someone to take you from the start to the finish of how to secure your Bitcoin.
Yeah, because I think in reality, right, this is where people taking accountability for their actions. Like Bitcoin is the ultimate one in there, because if you go back probably 100 years or so, people were 100% accountable for their wealth. It would largely be in gold or some form of goods and services. And what happens if you leave your gold out in the street and someone takes it? It's gone. Like, yeah, there's no one to phone and go, can I have my gold back? It's like, no, you left it in the street. Some guy took it. Do you know who it was? Like, no, it's gone then. Like, don't leave it in the street. You made a bad mistake and it's gone. The same as, oh, I left my tractor out in the street and it had the key in it and someone drove it off. I want my tractor back. No, like, it's gone. Like,
have you got a tractor?
I do have a tractor, yeah.
So that's why you've mentioned it twice in this show.
No, I mentioned tractors twice. I spent 10 hours today on a tractor. So yeah, I like tractors now.
You're just showing off.
You're just jealous you don't have a tractor. So, and I've spoken about this on this podcast numerous times, where it's like we've talked about, like taking custody of your Bitcoin needs to be simpler. It needs to be a case where like your grand can do it. And I've kind of always kind of gone, I agree, but I also push back and go, there's going to be a certain element of, if you make a mistake, it's gone. Like there's no one to call. Like there's going to be an element of, you need to freaking learn how to take custody of your money. And obviously Bitcoin is very digital, but it's quite simple to take custody of it. Like there's a lot of people that I have taught how to do it who are not technically that savvy. It's very much a USB device with a backup 24 words. You need to learn those 2 things. If you can do it, you can now protect either 10 grand or 10 billion pounds. It doesn't matter what the value is. You can store that on those 2 things. And so, yeah, so if you mess that up though, you lose the USB, you set fire to 24 words. Yeah, you set fire to 10 billion. And there's a certain element of, it has to be that way. Because if there is someone to call, if there is a support line that can get you those 24 words back, then they were never secure in the first place, were they? Because someone in the call center could have taken your 10 billion because they could, somehow they're answering your questions, right? So we just need to get to this point where we're very, very dependent on support lines. No matter what happens to my money, even if I'm an idiot and I send a scammer in India 10 grand of my money because they said they were going to fix my computer for me, I can phone up Barclays Bank and go, oh, they scammed me, give me my 10 grand back. And even if they can't get the money back, they might just refund you 10 grand because you're a good customer or they're just feeling stupid that day. Those days are going to be over because banks aren't going to exist. These kind of crazy profits they make aren't going to exist. Bitcoin is just a decentralized protocol. Everyone needs to look after their own money, look after your own wealth. This should be the money you earn, your retirement funds, your generational wealth that you pass on to your kids and your grandkids. That is your responsibility. So take a couple of days out of your fucking life and learn how to secure it and teach others how to secure it and do it well. That is going to be just it should be like an ingrained thing that we teach kids at primary school, how to secure your Bitcoin. And once we did that, we'd be all good. Like we wouldn't need 85K of government backups and da-da-da. It's not difficult. And so to answer that question though, absolutely, you can have $1 billion of Bitcoin, you can fuck it up, there's no help, there's no support. All that people are going to do is go, lol, you fucked up, lost £1 billion.
Do you not think that, especially in this day and age where concentration is at an all-time low, there's so much stimulation and distractions, that the human mind will just simply want to take the path of least resistance? Because what you're saying is that I need to implore the human brain to do something, and we've stopped that. Once upon a time, we used to remember telephone numbers. We used to remember, so much more. Now, I'll just outsource that. And people just want to, as you say, call up a helpline and rely on somebody else. And we're now in a society where I think that's just, unfortunately, the norm.
Yeah, well, the best way to break out of that victim mentality is to allow people to either leave their money in bank accounts and they're going to get stolen. And then some people are going to take custody of the Bitcoin. They're going to lose it. There's no better wake-up call than losing all the money you have. We've seen it countless times on Bitcoin Twitter. People have lost.
Just ask Peter Schiff.
Yeah, Peter Schiff lost probably about 20 grand of Bitcoin that someone gave him. And there's countless people.
But he lost money in fiat as well, but through his own bank.
Yeah, exactly. Peter Schiff is a fucking clown. But
yeah,
there's loads of examples of Bitcoiners kind of coming on Bitcoin Twitter going, I've lost these 24 words, I've lost this account, can someone hack my ledger? Can someone hack my treasure? Like I've locked myself out of it. And people just kind of go, how did this happen, dude? This is and so and in reality, this whole 14-second mindset that's been trained by TikTok, this is a fiat mindset. We're in Bitcoin, we are low time preference. You should be thinking in decades, not in seconds. So when you are securing your money, you're securing that for decades. So if you don't have a couple of hours to learn and to do that properly, then don't bother being a Bitcoiner. Leave it on exchange. You're probably safer leaving it on exchange. I literally would implore people that only want to spend 14 seconds on the Bitcoin security, leave it on an exchange. You're safer there. The worst thing you could do is actually try and secure it, because you're just going to be an idiot. You're going to make a mistake and nearly almost definitely lose it. You're going to have 100% loss. So, but if you're actually worried about your future financial security and your generational wealth, then spend a couple of hours on figuring out how a hardware wallet works, figure out how seed words work, and then just do it. And you'll realize how simple it really is. And then suddenly the risk that you then do suffer substantial loss with no one to help or support you is much less likely, because you've figured it out for yourself. You've taken accountability as opposed to relying on a centralized third party, which by doing so in itself has put a huge risk factor on your security, because the bank, even though you think you've outsourced all your security to them, they can steal that money. And the countries that you listed that have banned Bitcoin, nearly all those countries have also stolen the money from their citizens' bank accounts.
They did
we saw it a year or two ago in Argentina, my favorite country. They gave all their citizens a haircut, and it's a significant one.
Your other favorite country, Pakistan, unfortunately recently had a natural disaster in the form of an earthquake, I think it was. And so where it's left like thousands, if not millions of people stranded. It also makes me think that Bitcoin will be expedited potentially as the new route to getting these people out of the financial hole of where they've got to.
I thought you were going to say the government had robbed them while they were being injured.
No, that happened before. But I think, again, I've always said this as well. Whilst China stopped and kind of shot themselves in the foot by not continuing to mine Bitcoin, I feel like the thing that will stop them from becoming the #1 financial superpower is a natural disaster of some sort. And something will happen that will stop them from doing so. The only thing that will stop them is themselves.
Depends what they're doing.
And then they'll turn to Bitcoin. Go for it, number 9, if you want.
Yeah, what happens if people just stop buying Bitcoin? Surely it becomes worthless. I think this is quite a wide-ranging question. Because you start off with belief. What makes gold worth something because it's shiny? What makes silver? What makes, say, diamonds? It's all based upon what the market assumes. And then that kind of play it off against fiat, so government issued. What makes it worth, £1 worth £1? Well, the fact is that £1 is going to be worth, I don't know, 85 pence next year. And that's a big disadvantage with fiat. So I suppose you can argue this point to everything, because everything is based upon perception. Even a loaf of bread, it's like, how much should a loaf of bread cost? Well, should it cost as much as a steak? Should it cost as much as a banana? Should it cost as much as a diamond? It depends upon the circumstances. It depends upon the market. And that's the whole point behind Bitcoin, is it relies upon pure economics. It's based upon the market worth. It is what the public will pay. And if you apply that to, say, hyper-Bitcoinization, so we go through Africa, South America, get through North America, Europe, then it'll be worth, my Satoshis will be worth at least 100 billion, because fiat will have hyperinflated.
Yeah, because it's one of those, isn't it? It's like, like whenever the price of Bitcoin goes up, people go, ask me why. And I say there's more buyers than sellers. And then when the price of Bitcoin goes down, people ask me why. I say there's more sellers than buyers. So this example is saying, what if there's no buyers, only sellers? Does Bitcoin become worthless? It's like, well, eventually, yeah. Because if there's no one buying Bitcoin anymore, only selling, it means there's no requirement for Bitcoin and no one wants to buy it. So yeah, the price will trend to zero. Absolutely. Yeah, so Bitcoin does become worthless, provided there were no buyers.
But however, you aren't forced onto Bitcoin with a gun against your head.
Exactly, yeah. So Bitcoin is the only asset in the world that is open 24/7. It has never gone down. There's no ringing of a bell that opens up the trading of Bitcoin and closes it on a Monday and then closes it on a Friday, like stocks and shares. Bitcoin is open 24/7. So anyone who wants to sell their Bitcoin right now can sell it. And at the moment, the price of Bitcoin is $19,956, according to my block clock. It's about $20,000. And that is everyone in the world, 24/7 for 13 years. If you want to sell your Bitcoin, you could have sold it. But at the moment, people want to buy it. The second the price goes down, people buy. There's clearly a lot of buyers. The price of Bitcoin has gone from a fraction of a penny to $20,000 over the course of 13 years. So it suggests that people aren't going to stop buying Bitcoin. There's clearly a use case.
And we're also in the midst of a recession, no matter if America have redefined it. And this is a reaction that we're somewhere around about $20,000.
Yeah. I would also, again, go back to the classic human trait of we love to collect. And if there's scarcity around something, which in Bitcoin we know there is scarcity, then the opportunity to collect and stack sats, as we love to say, just becomes more and more heightened. If there are less people that want to buy it, good, because there's 3 avid Bitcoiners on this podcast that would love to collect more and more. So what I'd say to everybody is, don't buy. Forget it.
unless
Bitcoin's dead.
Unless you're a socialist and you start arguing against scarcity. I was on Twitter this week, and it's just like, I remember seeing, I think I sent the meme to everyone, which was on a date, this woman says, I'm a socialist, and the guy says, oh God, I just fucked up my own joke, but never mind. Says, I don't know anything about economics either.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's the fundamentals of economics. Throughout time, scarcity drives value.
Exactly. I remember when I got into Bitcoin and it was, you know, in the hundreds of dollars a coin, and people even then going, oh, it's going to go to less than $100, going to go to $50. And everyone on Bitcoin Twitter at the time was, if it even goes close to that, I'm going to buy it all.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point.
Yeah.
What the price of Bitcoin is, if someone goes like, oh, what if the price halves? Like half of Bitcoin Twitter, or pretty much all of it goes, I'm buying so much at that price. So this whole kind of use case of what if people just randomly stop buying Bitcoin, the only use case, the only time I can see people stopping to buy Bitcoin is if the core kind of reasons why you buy Bitcoin changes, which is it scarce? Is it no longer scarce? Is it no longer decentralized? Can it be government owned? Can I not keep control of my own Bitcoin? If any of these things kind of change, then yeah, fine. I would stop buying Bitcoin instantly and I just sell the Bitcoin I have. But those things have never changed in 13 years and don't show any time of changing anytime soon. So that isn't going to stop people buying Bitcoin. So if anything, the amount of buyers of Bitcoin is only increasing. So the trend of no buyers, we're doing the opposite, right? It's very much trending.
Yeah. It also goes back to what Jeff Booth talks a lot about from the author of The Price of Tomorrow, which is the network effect of Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is this technology that has had zero marketing whatsoever and is, as we said last week, around about 200 million users, and will continue to have more and more users and holders as time goes on. And so the network effect is just happening all by itself. When Satoshi printed the white paper back in August of 2009, I believe it was, or before that, because
October
2008, yeah, isn't it? So essentially, it was there, and it was just put up on the internet. Anybody could have read it, and we've gone from a single white paper, 8 pages long, to a multi-billion, depending on what month we're in, $1 trillion asset out of the blue. So it's a great question, but I think, as we said, 13, nearly coming up to 14 years in, don't think anybody's not going to not buy it.
Yeah. And again, it's like with all these questions, what happens if people stop buying pounds? Sure, it becomes worthless.
Mm.
And if I look at that and do the pounds question as opposed to the Bitcoin question, which one's more likely? I'm putting pounds hugely above Bitcoin in that example, because pounds, when you track pounds back over the last 100 years, it's lost 99.7% of its value. Why would you ever hold pounds as a store of value? It's insane.
Yeah. Right. Question number 10. People need to use money. They don't need Bitcoin, and there lies a problem.
This is the most triggering question, but yeah, it's
I think it goes into the fundamentals again. What's money? It's a medium of exchange. And ultimately, I think people have been heavily programmed over the last 50 years to use government issued. Again, before it was gold, and gold was a relatively sound money because it's hard to mine and therefore slightly scarce, apparently 2% growth, whereas now they still claim 2% growth. But we know, because the fact is all these gold mining companies have massive reserves, they're making more than 2% per year. And we don't know how much gold is in the world, which is why gold is a flawed currency now, because we don't know how much. And was it true that Uganda found an absolute massive quantity, or was that just a rumor?
No, it's been proven. It was
So that was.
Did you also see that big meteorite that went round again in the news? There was $10 quadrillion worth of gold, iron, and metal in one meteor, and it literally even argued that if we manage to land it, everyone becomes a millionaire. It's just like, again, a massive.
Well, we should pay everyone £1 million an hour.
I know, yeah. Why not?
So back to this. So talking about currencies, like there's been various currencies. So this is why I always push people, just read the first 50 to 100 pages of a Bitcoin standard. It will talk you through the history of money. So originally, I can't remember which village or which country it was, they used rice stones, which are giant rocks, in order to say, say I've paid you for this cow or whatever it is. It's a giant fucking rock, and you wouldn't move it. You just leave it in the center of town. But that villager over there, he'd say that he owns it now because of the trade. Then there's things like glass beads, because they were scarce in land. So you've got different levels of scarcity, hard to move. And these rice stones, I think, were from different islands, if I remember correctly. And the glass beads, if you're inland, you can't get near them. But when the
glass beads came from Europe,
but it wasn't Europe. It was an African country who were using it, but they were inland, so they didn't have access to the glass beads. And when Europeans came, they started trading them in because they could get them plentiful, and basically abuse the locals. So that's the scarcity again. And then it moved along to gold, which is hard to find. But then over time, as we've just talked about, Uganda, asteroids, and everywhere else, and we don't know what the gold supply is around the world. And then it moved to fiat money, which is government issue, but what's it's backed by. So you kind of go, there's the evolution of money, where it got to a reasonable standard. Then it went to fiat, where they kind of went, fuck you all, we're going to treat you like idiots, and just pretty much put election promises, and basically you can pay with your future lack of earnings and purchasing power. And this is where Bitcoin comes in, because it is, people gravitate towards the soundest or hardest money. So can you expand the monetary supply beyond 21 million? Is it secure? Is it scalable? So yeah, you can trade in Satoshis. Is it quick? Lightning? Yeah. So if you gave everyone a choice, do you want a depreciating asset like fiat, or do you want Bitcoin? What would they choose? And you can convert all your assets into the equivalent of that. So do you want, say, £10,000 in Bitcoin, or do you want £10,000 in fiat? So potentially in 5 years' time, fiat will be worth, let's say, £7,000 because the government have chipped away at it. Whereas Bitcoin, you'll always have £10,000 worth of Bitcoin, which you bought in the first place.
Yeah.
So that's the whole argument. You're only using fiat because you've been forced to with a gun and prison.
That, and also, of course, over time, medium of exchanges have changed. But it also depends on, obviously, where you're based and what you're doing. So, in prisons, medium of exchanges will be perhaps cigarettes or food. Between kids, a medium of exchange could be Pokemon cards or certain toys. In certain parts of Africa, medium of exchanges are digital airtime between individuals. So it all depends on what both parties decide is valid and okay as the medium of exchange between one another, and therefore, where is their belief as well? So going back to the question, people need to use money, they don't need Bitcoin. Well, if we no longer believe in money, i.e. fiat, because we know that governments can print up to 40% of the entire money pot itself. Therefore, well, what value does that have? Then we'll certainly turn to alternative hard money, such as Bitcoin, the hardest money that there is known to man, because it's hard to replicate.
Yeah, I think it's one of the important points is it's so important to understand what money is at the moment. People really do not understand what money is at the moment, and they do not understand what is happening, why their price of groceries has gone up, why their energy bills have gone up, and it's fundamentally corruption. Whereas Bitcoin stops that. As it gets said all the time on Twitter, Bitcoin fixes this.
Yeah, getting this question really is saying is people need to pay for stuff, and I can't pay for stuff in Bitcoin. That's kind of what he means. And so right now, then a lot of your bills need to be paid in government issued currency. That is where we are on the adoption curve right now. But when the money that you need to pay those bills is hyperinflating to such an extent that you physically can't pay the bill, then that's when you realize there's a massive use case for Bitcoin. Now, hopefully you realize there's a use case for Bitcoin before then. And it's because at that point it'd be too late. The majority of your savings would have evaporated, and what you can convert into Bitcoins can be very little. But so I guess at the moment, how many things can you pay for Bitcoin with? It's not a lot right now. I'd say probably less than 5% of stuff available in the world can be bought with Bitcoin directly. 95% of stuff can't be. So right now, it largely is a store of value for the majority of people. Grab your fiat currency and convert it into Bitcoin. But for the 5%, which again, it's always very UK centric, these questions, because we live in a rich country that hasn't collapsed yet. But if you live in Venezuela, Argentina, wherever, then you say people need to use money but don't need Bitcoin, where that lies a problem. They'd look at you and think you're crazy, and they would go, my money is worthless. I had to convert my money to Bitcoin so I could buy my groceries this week. And this is the whole point of, well, this may never happen here. This isn't going to happen in the UK. It's never happened in America, but
because they're such great empires.
Luckily, they'll never fail.
It's never happened before, has it? So kind of, we're talking about present day examples there with Venezuela, but if you go back, Rome, what happened there is equivalent, where they were coin clipping. So they had their original, which had so much gold in it and silver, and then they started cutting it and minting the coins so they're worth less. And the amount of gold and silver went down significantly, so the monetary value was worth less and less, until the point that people weren't accepting the currency, and it faltered. And that was the Roman Empire, the greatest empire. And it also happened with China. I think they were either on a silver or a gold. Actually, it's a silver in China, and they moved towards a fiat standard. And that was the death of one of their biggest dynasties because of that. Again, people stopped accepting the currency because it was worthless, because it was just backed by government and didn't have any value, because it was hyperinflated. So it's happened before, and it's probably happened a lot more times than we realize.
Well, this is the first time, however, though, that we've been able to develop something where we can't inflate it whatsoever. And I think it's, I've put in our group as we're speaking right now, the various different types of currencies that have happened over the years, since 9000 BC. But ultimately, we're now at a point where this is it. You cannot get any more of this. So if we use this is going to be the forever money potentially.
Well, we say this, but gold, there could have been a gold standard to a point where it could have been back, so we go to the gold standard. It's because people, didn't realize the corruptness of the government and moved to paper money backed by gold. And then the government moved it to pure fiat money.
Right.
So, with Bitcoin, you end up with, you use your Bitcoin, but why don't you use on notes backed by Bitcoin? And that's always the danger, that you coerced off a solid standard, because gold isn't perfect, but it's a hell of a lot better than fiat standard.
Yeah. My argument would be purely that the gold would have died. Fiat killed gold earlier, but Bitcoin would have killed gold anyway, because gold is like some physical shiny rock. Like you have to be in person to transact with it. And to be fair to gold, the internet didn't exist when gold was used as a medium of exchange 1,000 years ago. So of course, when people were doing it then, fantastic exchange of value. Gold did amazingly well as being very, very sound money for the best part of 1,000 years. But then the internet came along, and suddenly now I want to transact with someone on the opposite side of the globe and transact a tiny amount of value. Can I do that with gold? No, I can't. Can I do it with Bitcoin and actually move the actual Bitcoin, not just an IOU of gold or an IOU of Bitcoin from me to him? No, I can send the actual Satoshis from me to him, tiny amounts, across the entire globe, fractions of a second. Yes, I can. So Bitcoin is always going to be the new form of money and replace gold. But yeah, so it's like the people need to use money. It's like, of course, like Bitcoin is going to be like the next form of money, and obviously people need to use it. It's just there's not like Bitcoin isn't today's money. It's not like the industry standard. It's not the global standard currency. But once it is, you're going to wish you got on earlier. That's always going to be the thing. And so it doesn't seem obvious today, and it won't seem obvious tomorrow. It might not even seem obvious in 10 years. But the sooner you get some sats, it's like almost a hedge, right? So even if you're quite conservative, and a lot of these questions seem like quite conservative, and Bitcoin sounds like a risk, but in reality, if you actually are quite a conservative person and go, I don't take risk, then just take a 1%, a 2%, a 3% allocation of Bitcoin. Because what if you're wrong?
Yeah.
I think it's, to your point, you've got to understand what are the properties which you want from money. Understand that, and that will help you guide you on what is an actual good investment.
Yeah, most people have no clue what money is. It's a good point you raised before. Like if anyone listening to this and disagrees or whatever, ask yourself the question, what is money? And really try and write it down. If you can't, then go buy the Bitcoin Standard by Seyfedin Moose, because he explains it in the first 15 pages as Dr. 10% has said like 5 times already. Because most people don't understand that bit, which straight away, if you don't understand what money is and the history of money, then all these questions we've just answered tonight are irrelevant to you. You have to understand money first. And most people do not understand what money is.
People want me to explain to them why they should buy Bitcoin. And quite often my response is, you're not ready.
You can't handle the truth.
You can't.
And literally, but it's that they do not understand money. It's that principle, and you think it almost sounds like it's an idiot question, but it's been so hidden and messed up ultimately.
It's the biggest lie, isn't it? It's the biggest lie right in front of our faces when they stand up there and talk about inflation, talk about government budgets.
The inflation dragon.
Yeah.
Coming fucking up your shit. It wasn't us, it was the inflation dragon.
Can't afford this, can't afford that. And you're like, in reality, they can afford whatever they want. They have literally infinite money.
They've just stolen off you. Like if inflation worked, they wouldn't need to tax you, and if the taxes work, they wouldn't have to inflate the monetary supply. It's just
exactly. But thing is, neither work.
Yeah. So let's go on to the last question. So, well, it's not a question; it's a point. It was quite triggering. I hate that word, but it was triggering. So, someone at the top is making a fortune out of this, and they seem to be untraceable.
Yeah, we've done with the pod. We can't answer this one.
You talk about a Satoshi.
I think I just look at this and go, why does he have? Well, he or she or they have to be traceable.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, the whole point of this is, if Satoshi was traceable, they'd be hunted down.
You'd be imprisoned.
Yeah, if you create something which contends with a US dollar, you'd be hunted down, told to stop it. But the whole point was, he looked at the history of money, or she, or they, and said, these are the core concepts, and this is how I'll put it into code, and created and set it off. And it pretty much has snowballed. And that's the beauty about it. But he, she, or they aren't coming forward and saying, this is mine. It's just been known, and the market has taken it.
Yeah, I guess the question though is kind of leaning towards Bitcoin being a Ponzi scheme, by saying that there is somebody at the top making a fortune, kind of debunking all of our arguments previously, where we're saying, well, the trade between, let's say, you and I, Mr. All-In, as in I want to buy, you want to sell, isn't happening, or it is happening, and they're carving 1% off each and every one of this. So for me, it's like, okay, there isn't somebody at the top that is just overseeing all of this. The point around the fact that Bitcoin is decentralized, it doesn't really resonate. And we need to separate Bitcoin from all of the other altcoins that are out there, and then also fiat as well, because it is completely different in terms of what we're offering and what is being offered as well. There is no one at the top. There is no one central ruler at the top. And
I thought Mr. All-In owned about a third of the supply.
Yeah, and I always point people to Lynn Alden's paper of "Is Bitcoin a Ponzi Scheme?", where she defunks the myth that it is.
Yeah, because I actually heard this argument whilst I was still working in the same office as you guys work in, and someone said, yeah, so Satoshi, the creator of Bitcoin, owns 5% of the supply. He owns up to 1 million coins of the 21 million, and that's a massive risk. He could dump it any time. He hasn't yet. Why would I invest in something where someone could dump 5% of the supply at any point? I'd looked at them, and this guy was our head of accounts. That's when, do you think Amazon's a good investment? He went, absolutely. One of the soundest companies in the world. Jeff Bezos owns 30%. He could dump at any time. What if he does? And he just went, that's not the same thing. And it absolutely, like, look at every single big company in the world. There's a single guy at the top that has a huge chunk of the company.
Or BlackRock or Vanguard.
Yeah, exactly. Normally it's BlackRock or Vanguard that owns 10%. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why it's like, that's a different level of corruption that these people aren't ready for yet.
But I mean,
that's a great reset.
So it's kind of like,
but most companies, right? Most companies, like there is a founder, and does Satoshi deserve 5% of the supply for creating the soundest version of money that humans have ever created? Absolutely. Has he moved one Satoshi or sold one Satoshi in 13 years of the network being alive? Nope. So not only does he own 5% of the network and is now one of the richest guys on the planet, he hasn't actually converted a single Satoshi into fiat and exercised any of that wealth whatsoever, show me a Mark Zuckerberg, a Jeff Bezos, and Elon Musk. All these guys have created huge value. They've also exited and created huge value for themselves and are now buying loads of kind of goods and services that exist in the world, whether they be yachts and houses or whatever. Satoshi, if he's still alive, created Bitcoin, is one of the richest guys on the planet, has 1 million Bitcoin, and has not sold or moved or exchanged a single Satoshi. So
he just dropped the bomb and walked away.
Yeah.
That's literally what he did.
And left his 1 million Bitcoin supposedly maybe to rot and just be like, that's my donation.
So
what's interesting as well goes back to what we were saying before about understanding money, because if people understood money or cared to, like, again, the participants on this podcast read one single financial report, you would see that in an annual report or a financial report, it always lists significant percentage owners. And so therefore, the point of owning just 5% from Satoshi, in every company has major shareholders that aren't just BlackRock and Vanguard. There is a single individual or individuals that own percentages of the company.
But spin this round and think about, so someone at the top of the fiat system is making a fortune out of this. BlackRock, Vanguard, with their leveraging of assets due to inflation. And then what's that decrepit billionaire, George Soros?
Yeah.
There's some other decrepit old billionaires as well, using their money to make politics more malleable to their needs.
I think Klaus Schwab.
Yeah.
Don't really know what he is, to be perfectly honest.
Just the head of the WEF, which is the...
We don't really need to go into that, I think. I think we're going on to something much later.
Yeah, but like you said, it's the same thing though, right? It's just let's just switch it around and go, don't even leave it in companies, because yeah, if you're an investor in a company, being worried that one guy at the top who created the thing owns 5%, if that's your reason for not investing, then, well, you probably never invest in a single company ever, because every founder has, if a founder doesn't have at least 5%, then what the fuck was the founder doing? Like, he should have that. He should have way more. He should have more like 30, 40, 50%. And then, you know, as the years go by, that gets diluted. But yeah, even when you look on a government and a global authority regulatory kind of basis, who are the guys running things and what are they doing? That's where to look. That's where to look at the centralization and go, what are they doing when they pull the strings? So kind of looking at Bitcoin and like the barbs that get fired at Satoshi, completely crazy. If those coins had moved, if he dumped a load, and if anything, like the fact that Satoshi owns 1 million coins literally doesn't matter. He could dump them tomorrow. It would dump the price for a period of time. Those coins would get bought up and then it gets absorbed and the price continues to go up. It's just, it would be a temporary dip. That's all it is, because Satoshi essentially, the genius of what he built, not only is that it was genius when he wrote it, it's so genius that it doesn't need him anymore. So even if he completely came out and went, I hate Bitcoin now, I'm dumping all my Bitcoin, and everything I did on Bitcoin ever was a massive mistake, doesn't matter. Wouldn't even matter, because the fact is, Bitcoin is what it is. We've looked at the code. It is sound money. Whether Satoshi likes it or not doesn't matter. It's sound money. We're going to continue going with Bitcoin. So yeah, it's like all the questions around Satoshi and what coins he owns or doesn't own are just they're largely a distraction and don't really matter.
I would just look at things like purchasing power as well. Just look at, you know, what happened 15, 20 years ago. So say cars. I think BMW 3 Series were 15 years ago about 20 to 25 grand. Now they're probably about 40, aren't they? And wages haven't really changed in that space. So you almost lost half the value of your money in 15 to 20 years. And your wages have probably gone up 10%. So just think about that. That's the whole principle. It's stopping them stealing from you.
Well, there we have it. 11 questions asked and answered by the pod. Please do keep them coming. I don't think there's anything more for us to add, but this has been pod number 65, brought to you by mess that up. We can probably try that again. Brought to you by Mr. All In, aka the $1 Trillion Man. Brought to you also by Dr. Evil 10%, aka the People's Champ. Brought to you by me, myself, Sir Never Look, aka the Excellence of Execution. And she was here, but she was never here. Mrs. No Show. Or could show, but won't show, but might show, because she has the link.